For today's video, we are going to continue the theme of monsters for October, and we are looking at none other than Starro the Conqueror. This particular figure is a build figure from the Target exclusive Crime Syndicate build wave. Each one of these pieces was released periodically, and the only way to get them, of course, was Target. So, with that said, why am I looking at Starro? Starro captures a sort of H.P. Lovecraft vibe to me. The idea of sea monsters with a cosmic twist to them. And this is a giant starfish that literally came to Earth, caused havoc, sent out like it's, tiny little starfish monsters to manipulate and basically take over the human race, right? This is that classic sort of fear of alien invasion sort of plot. And I really like that a lot of sci-fi back in the day explored this type of premise. Of course, sci-fi horror has evolved to more than just alien invasions. It's evolved into stuff like the Alien movies. And then you also have, experimentation gone wrong, all that kind of stuff, right? Every sort of trope you can think of in sci-fi. But Starro is more simple, and it's just a giant starfish. Imagine a giant starfish that's not from Earth. It's from elsewhere. And it has the intelligence to take over and conquer worlds. That is kind of scary and messed up in its own way. So yeah. Now, what I'm actually surprised about right now is how effective these flight stands are for Starro. Because they are actually holding them in place. Because one thing to note is that this figure cannot stand. This figure is basically... yeah, you just have to lean it against the wall or something, which is basically what I did. I leaned it against the back of my shelf, so then it can just stay standing. But you can't really make it stand on its own. It doesn't seem like it'll do that because, the tips of its legs, I guess, arm, and whatever this top part is called, they all have bendy wire in them, but they're not strong enough to hold him in place. So that is something to keep in mind if you have this figure. Now, does he come with anything? No, he does not come with anything, unfortunately, because build figures never come with any accessories, except for some of the more recent ones we've been getting. But some of the older ones, not so much. You get whatever is in the box. So, but with Starro, you can call these accessories that are part of him, I guess, which I will show in a minute. Before we do that, I do want to show this nice picture that I showed in my binder video. So, if I was to be correct, this was supposed to be an example of 4 different images of the Crime Syndicate members going against Starro, right, from different angles. And it was probably supposed to evolve just like the way that they did for the Futures End build wave that was also Target exclusive. But Mcfarlane got lazy, and this is the only image of Starro actually in a figure photography. The other boxes just showed the 3D renders of the characters, and that was it. So you never get to see what would have been the final, maybe fight with Starro where all 4 characters are together. And this is where I will point out which piece came with which, because this one is a little bit significant to me. So this figure has a lot of heftiness to him. He does have weight, which is very nice because he's not just a chunk of plastic. So the legs came with Power Ring. This front piece where his eyes are came with Ultraman, who was the first figure in the wave. These 2 pieces that represent his arms came with Owlman, who was the 3rd figure. The 2nd figure in the wave was this back part where his mouth is, as you can see. This was included with Superwoman. So all these pieces put together, you have a very nice looking starfish, right? It is all one color. There is no really any crazy breakup in dimensions. However, one thing I will give Mcfarlane credit is the fact that the sculpting on this thing is just amazing, right? You can see all these sculpted details all over this thing. They're all the same, of course, on the front, because this is like his skin, right? But you can see his eyes right there. And of course, they're hollow inside. I don't think there's anything underneath it. but it's still really cool. And then on the backside, you can see all the nasty sort of like, you can see his teeth, you can see the suction cups, right? Like kind of like an octopus. There's just this nice detail all around every single, ligament on this freaking giant figure. And I really love this type of figure because even though it can't stand, it is still very mesmerizing to look at. It is very cool to have as a piece in your collection if you're collecting DC Multiverse. It is a really cool thing to see. So I'm going to move them to the side really quickly and show that you can consider these, I guess, as accessories, but they did come with the figures. They were meant for the figures. So each figure included a starfish sort of thing, right? These guys. There are 4 of them. So this is one of them. Then you get another one, right? And then after that, you get this one. They all look kind of the same, but they're like molded in like a different way, right? And they also have details to them, right? They got a mouth, they got the suction cup. And what do you do with these? Well, instead of putting it on on the character's head, let me grab a figure, for example. Let's bring in a, let's see if it works on our boy Lex Luthor. So these don't go on their head. What you do is you pull these open because they're like soft PVC. They wrap around the body. Now it depends on the figure. Like for Lex, he has like armor on. I think I'm also putting it on wrong. There's like a way to put this on correctly. So let me try again. But yeah, basically something like this, right? You put it on a figure. It could be any figure. These are compatible with any DC Multiverse or 7-inch scale figures. But you basically put these on them, and then it looks like they're being basically controlled by the Starro starfish alien monsters that he summons. So it's really cool to see that he comes with these. And it's such a nice thing to have with each figure because then you can have all 4 of these figures with these on. So it looks like, oh, if they lost the fight, they are now being controlled by Starro. Now, one thing to know, these do not have bendy wires in their legs. They are pre-molded this way with soft PVC. However, Starro technically has articulation of some kind, if you want to call it that. So like his legs, for example, I believe has bendy wire. I don't know if it does or not. There are certain areas that do. I know that for the arms, as you can see, they do have it. It's not as good as you think it is. It could bend forward. It can bend a little bit backwards, but because of how thick this material is, you're not going to get much range of motion with the bendy wire because it's just such a thick piece of, I don't know if I would call it plastic, but it is some sort of material that is covering the bendy wire inside, right? The top part here also has a little bit of a bendy wire thing to it, but again, it's very limiting. So you're not going to get much motion or movement with this because this figure acts pretty much more like a statue than it would as an action figure because it doesn't have much articulation. However, as a piece on your shelf, if you needed a Starro for the sake of having it in your collection, this is definitely one of those figures that is really worth it. However, because of the exclusivity thing with this figure, you probably won't be able to find this anymore. As I've said, this is not a new figure. This is an older figure now, right? It came out a while ago. If you're lucky to even find all these pieces for a cheap price on eBay or any of those like third-party sites where people sell, well, not third-party sites, those those places where people sell the stuff they don't need anymore. If you're able to find this for a good deal, I say pick it up. But again, it is really up to you if you really want something like this on your shelf. If you're not like a hardcore DC fan, or you don't even have to be hardcore. What I'm saying is that if you're just not crazy about a giant starfish, honestly, you can live without this. But because Starro is just one of those classic sort of characters in the comics, it is cool to have, right? And if you can get these to go with it, you can use it even on the Justice League characters. It doesn't have to be the Crime Syndicate. So what a amazing build figure. I would have to say this is a really fun build figure. It is unique. It is different. It is not like your typical action figure that you would build at the end of a wave. Instead, you are building, something that is like almost as if it's a statue. That's what it feels like to me. So, and on that note, let's also take a zoom in on that mouth too really quickly. Look at just the way they sculpted that mouth. Just want to point that out. But yeah, there's that. And if you want a comparison to see how big he is next to a figure, let's show that as well. So, the scale is really bad because Starro is supposed to be big, right? So, as a build figure, was it a good idea to make him this small? No. It should have been a mega figure. But again, mega figures all vary in sizes. They could have said that this is also considered mega fig size. Excuse me. So, yeah, that's another thing to note. So yes, the size looks small, but depending on how good you are with camera angles, right, you can make it look like he's big. And this is something that I would like to do in the future. Not right now because I don't have the capability, but I want to do something like this. Like, that is such a good figure photography photo from the actual box itself. Like, for Ultraman, the way they put the Starro, the way they angled it, the way they resized it just to make it look big, that's all you need to do to make a photo for this thing just look amazing. So, with that said, that will be today's look at Starro the Conqueror. There's not really much I can say for this figure, as it's very simple, very basic. I guess the last thing I can say is that if it does scale with your head, you could technically use this as cosplay. I don't know if it's a good idea if you should do that with this, because it's not something cheap to build. So maybe cut out the cosplay sort of note right there. But I don't know. That was just what I thought, because I remember when I finished building this thing, I just put it in front of my face and I was like, oh, it scales really good with the real life human face, like like one of these tiny starfishes wrapping around your head. So just a thought. But that is the end of this review. If you liked this video and you found it fun, give it a like. If you want to subscribe to my channel, you could also do that as well. But you don't have to do any of these things. And with that, I will see you in the next video, and take care.